Hello.
Hi.
One more. Here we go. Amazing. I'm just so grateful technology has worked today. Well, welcome to our Abundance, Financial Wisdom and Wellbeing in a Changing World panel. We're really excited to have this conversation. We just had a really wonderful conversation or tying in, connecting all the dots of people, planet, profit. And this it ties into this conversation because I think if more women had more resources, higher levels of worth, how much we can positively keep contributing to the world around us. So it all the dots keep connecting. I will go ahead and let each of you introduce yourselves. Barbara's back with us. You may have heard her as we initially kicked off, my co-host, but I know people are coming and going. So maybe Barbara, before we jump into the panel, we'll have you give a brief intro once again.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So Barbara Boden, I am partnering with Georgina on this great summit today. I am a co-founder of 4XI Global Consulting, which I started last year during the middle of the pandemic after spending over 18 years at JP Chase, where I was managing the global amenity services. So I'm always interested in finance, and so I am excited to be part of this panel today and to hear what you have to say. So thank you.
Emily, you want to go ahead and intro?
Sure. Emily Green. I am the Director of Private Wealth at Ellevest. I've been at Ellevest for 3.5 years. I actually started our private wealth business. We are a firm focused on closing the gender money gaps. I can tell you more about all of what that means, but to Georgina's point, we believe if women had more money, we won't be equal until we are financially equal within this. And so it's a loaded conversation that we can have about all of this, from investing to debt to paying taxes to all these things. And I run our team that works with women who have accumulated wealth to not only get invested, but to invest along with their value. So into things that actually disproportionately affect women. I too actually worked at JP Morgan. And so before Ellevest, I worked in wealth management at JP Morgan, working with high and ultra high net worth families and foundations, traditional wealth management. And I always joke, I'm like, if you wrote my job description, that would be rather the same, but my life is completely different in working at a place like Ellevest. So very excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yes, it's great.
Hi, everyone. My name's Rebecka. Let me know if I'm getting a lag or something. I'm currently calling from Lahore, Pakistan, and I've been on the ground talking with a lot of women here who are entrepreneurs and who are trying to empower small communities of women here. And it's just like breaking my brain in terms of how much work needs to be done in order to accelerate women in different parts of the world. For example, things as simple as having confidence in trying to figure out what you want in life, or being able to act on it, things that you normally wouldn't think about. But to cut it short, I'm a founder of First Milli. First Milli is all about making personal finance accessible. I've been working in tech for the past 10 years, and my goal is trying to streamline the personal finance process so that anyone can be on their path to their first milli. For some, that might be 600,000. For some, that might be 1 million. But the idea is that first milli is kind of your road to financial independence, to be able to say no to toxic situations or whatever. A little bit more about myself. I come from a first-gen low-income background. I did my undergrad at Penn. I took a lot of Wharton courses. I learned a lot about finances. I learned a lot about 401k or Roth IRA. And I've slowly been building my own wealth. I'm into like real estate hacking, and I would consider myself a translator when it comes to personal finance topics and making them easier to understand.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I think this discussion today is really what you're talking about, is to connect the dots between the financial and personal well-being. We'll dive into an honest conversation of how we can level the playing field when it comes to financial literacy and wisdom for, women feeling a lack of confidence to take control of their finances and the resources available. So ultimately, financial literacy has a global impact in achieving equality, and that's what we've been talking about today. We will explore how marginalized communities, as you're mentioning, are especially vulnerable and what can be done to better serve them. So why don't we start off with the first question, which would be, please tell us about your organization, how they are helping women and marginalized communities take control of their finances. Emily, you want to start with Ellevest?
Sure. So we at Ellevest, we actually started with the goal to close the gender investment gap. This was in 2014. We wanted to close the gender investment gap, which was focusing on that women keep on average 70 cents of every dollar in cash, which for the average woman costs her hundreds of thousands of dollars over her lifetime. And for wealthy women costs her millions of dollars over her lifetime. And so when we look at this, it's even exasperated by the fact that women live longer. Our salaries peak in our 40s versus men in their 50s. And we all know that the gender pay gap exists. And so when we looked at it, thinking, why aren't women investing? And it wasn't what the traditional firms would be saying. Women are risk averse. They don't like to talk about money, all these types of things. Our goal was really focusing on that Wall Street was built by men and for men. And we really needed to build a place that was for women, so that a place that was built with them in mind, not trying to fit women into a certain construct. And so instead of trying to change women, let's try to change what finance looks like. And so we originally built out a digital platform that is accessible to anyone with no minimum. And so you can invest $2, you can invest $1,000. And then I started our private wealth. So for people, million, 10 million, 100 million to continue to invest. And then this summer we actually launched a membership model with coaching and banking services so that people could actually learn how to pay off their debt, have a session about buying a home, learn about actually have a debit card that when you purchase at women-owned businesses that we have a list from, you actually get cash back from purchasing at women-owned businesses. And so our goal is really to help the woman who's trying to get out of hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to the woman with $100 million. And how can we set them up on the right path, no matter where they are in their money life? And so really helping all women, because to your point, of looking at well-being, when you look at actually the source of stresses in both women and men's life, money is the number one source of stress in women's life. So how can we solve for that? And it was really by creating something that we spent a lot of time finding ways that women thought about money rather than, again, trying to fit them into the construct that has been built for hundreds of years.
You mentioned something interesting. You said that women reach their peak of earnings in their, what'd you say, 40s?
40s
and
50s, yeah.
And yet women live longer. Do you have any insight into why?
So this goes into women also take a lot more career breaks. And so we actually have there's actually a lot, and that doesn't only mean to have kids. Like that also means like if there's a son and daughter, and someone needs to take care of the elderly parents, it ends up, a lot of times being the daughter within there. And so there's a lot of bumps in the road that happen to women within that. It's the social contract that exists within this, that women's salaries peak in their 40s within that. A lot of the problem, frankly, is how women increase in their careers, frankly, and actually promoting women and all of that. When you look at these organizations, I always kind of joke that it's, an organization is not diverse just because it has, it's not, Facebook, yes, is very diverse, but like, it's not because you just look at like Sheryl Sandberg's in the C-suite. So the whole organization is diverse, like within here and looking at all that. And I think, Barbara, you probably, from big banks, like I used to see this, like there'd be women at the top and women at the bottom. And in the middle, there was kind of this land that women didn't exist in.
Yeah. Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's very interesting. How about you, Rebecka?
Yeah, so First Milli focuses more on the first gen perspective. First gen in the sense of, your parents are probably immigrants, and they were too busy working hard that they didn't focus on investing or budgeting. It was busy like making sure you were getting a quality education. So First Milli focuses on creating a lot of content and breaking down really complicated topics, and also doing a lot of research. Like, for example, Roth IRAs are now available for those over 70 years old to use. That wasn't possible before. We work a lot in like exploring like investment strategies, like the easiest investment strategies that are very accessible. And we focus a lot on showing what the opportunity cost is if you don't invest, and how easy it is to break $1 million just by investing $100 per paycheck up to $500. I know for many people that's not possible, but the idea is to constantly be sharing this information, creating accountability, creating communities, and that's really what gets the conversation going. And that's what First Milli is focusing on right now. It's a lot of teaching. And ultimately, we are working on a digital platform, a community and personal finance platform that will enable users to put in their financial goal and be able to reach their goals based on what we found works best for the community.
Thank you. And quick question on the Rebecka for you is what about the content and like language piece? I guess this goes for both of you. Is all of the language, the content being delivered 100% in English, or is there any thought about being inclusive of other languages potentially to reaching different communities?
We absolutely do have goals of being in Spanish, being in Chinese. Like, I work in tech, so I know it's absolutely possible to translate all of this, but a lot of information is lost in context. So like, translation services aren't 100% perfect, but the language we do use are kind of like catchphrases that we've seen really circulating well within the personal finance space, like the personal finance space where minorities are really translating these things. And like, for example, we would use language like if abuelito, like, it's kind of like that math problem statement you would read in like your textbook, and we would like replace it with like words that are like, I guess, closer to the Latino or minority culture, and just to make it fun. Like, for example, we would even do things like, I know someone else has coined this, but instead of saying like a 401k, we would say a 401k. So that's kind of like the little things that we do, but not exactly 100% delivering content in other languages, though it is absolutely a goal.
Well, yeah. I know that we're this, I'm like looking at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions. We had so many questions planned. We're going to run out of time. So I wanted to maybe do like some lightning rounds, because maybe people are watching, these are kind of like, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money to invest, or like, this is so scary. I haven't done anything with my finances. It's too late, or the pandemic wiped me out. I had savings and then now I don't, So from both of you, I'd love to hear, like, what advice do you have for somebody like that they're just like a little even scared to get started because maybe they think they don't have enough to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that you don't need to be, one Mark Cuban or one of these guys to be investing. I think that part of it has been the way that money is portrayed in media. And I guarantee that you could find the biggest feminist on the planet, and if you asked her what does an investor, like, who do you picture when you picture an investor? They're going to picture someone like Warren Buffett. They're going to picture an old white guy. It's been drilled into our heads. That's what we're all going to picture. When we think about who an investor is, we don't picture ourselves. We don't picture if it's a young millennial woman. We don't picture, that's not who we picture. And so it's hard to get around that. And media, often tells women to, not buy a latte or to save, not to invest. But I think we need to get around that. And that's why we at Ellevest had built, investing with no minimum. And that was really important. And frankly, we don't make money on people below a certain amount, but it was really important for us to have that and the ability for women that can only invest $1 a month, whatever it may be, to start to get invested, because there is this real power in what's called compounding, that, it's long, the earlier you invest, the better. But that doesn't mean that investing today is worse than investing in 5 years. And so, yes, maybe you should have invested 5 years ago, but like, we can all, looking back in time on investing is like the worst game you can play. Like, everyone's like, I wish I bought Tesla last year. I wish I bought Zoom. I wish I bought this. Like, let's just move forward. And let's just think about how to get invested. And so, I encourage everyone that make sure that you have an emergency savings. That's number one, and thinking about that. But then above and beyond that, you should be investing. You should be, if you have a 401k, investing in 401k, looking at IRAs, like looking to do all those things is really important, no matter what age you are, where you are in your life, in those types of stages. So figuring out how to make that work for you.
Right. And Rebecka, what do you share with your community that might be a little fearful to get started?
I would absolutely agree with everything Emily said. And I would also further add that I feel that a lot of us don't get started in investing because, and not just like the research that is mostly published on women, on being fearful of investing, maybe not knowing exactly what you're doing, or maybe feeling that you have to understand the entire landscape in order to start investing. Like, how does the stock market work? What's the ROI? What are dividends? I think it's absolutely more about first understanding your why, like your alignment in terms of like what are your goals? Why are you investing? And I have a huge startup background, and more than anything, it's more about jumping into the ocean without exactly knowing how to swim just yet. It's like, okay, now you have to figure out how to swim. And you can do that by starting to invest like $100 or $500 into a Roth IRA via an index fund. I only say Roth IRA. I'm a huge lover of Roth IRAs because your earnings grow tax-free. And if you earn any income, you're able to invest in a Roth IRA. And I just think like not everyone is qualified to invest in it because there's a certain like maximum threshold. But I definitely recommend, if you put $100 in and you wait about 5 months as you're still trying to learn about like the financial industry, you'll find that $100 has grown over time. Maybe it's $110, but the idea is that you jump into the ocean and you start getting a sense of it. Like, do you like, is it too cold for you? Is it too warm for you? Do you want to go over to the left side, over to the right side? And I really believe in this, like learning by just doing, because absolutely coming from like a first gen background, like there's also so much, I guess, like money history that you have to understand about yourself, like your relationship with money. Like I am terrified of not having enough money, and I understand that as like one of my biggest pain points on how I am pretty risk averse in that area. So, I mean, too long didn't read, just get started.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm like looking at all our questions, like we are like so ready. I mean, I think, one of the main goals of this conversation was to just open the door to having a conversation about money, women talking about money. Like She Ventures, like we really focus on abundance and well-being. And the abundance piece is something that like came into the organization like recently. And it's also, as a founder, working with so many founders, and also throughout my career, is just this like women have more freedom and confidence when they have the resources to go out and do what they want to go do and have the impact they want to have. So how can we better open the doors to have these meaningful conversations? And what resources would you point women to, wherever they are in their abundance journey, because abundance, it goes beyond money. It's abundance of your being. And I 100% agree. Having money stress is horrible. Rebecka, I'm a daughter of immigrants as well. And seeing the stress, growing up, and then, just as a founder as well, like, you don't feel healthy, like you don't sleep well at night. Like it's not a nice position to be in, but it's a position that a lot of people are in. So how can we open this conversation so that women feel more comfortable diving in, talking about money? It's not a scary thing. It's how to make money work for you, basically.
I would just start with it. The knowing that it's not just you. There is research out there. There's no dollar amount that women make that they feel comfortable to tell their friends. Mm-hmm. And so you could make, if you either feel too poor or too rich. We actually, this was obviously before last March, but we were at a luncheon that we were invited to speak at a very, very fancy restaurant in New York City, and it was all successful women, and we stated that there's no number that women feel comfortable with, and a woman was like, that's not true. And so my CEO asked her, so how much money do you make? And she was like horrified that we would ask this in front of someone, and she was like, I can't tell. I'm like, yeah, see, you won't tell people how much money you make, and even though you're really in a room full of people that you are your peers. But, I do think it is important and to start small and start to have conversations about money with friends. And, we really do encourage people that women are taught that talking about money is this like dirty thing, and it's really unattractive to talk about money. And that actually not being good with money is cute. And I actually would encourage, have conversations with your friends, have a club where you talk about these things, have these this is how you understand if you're being paid enough, if you're investing enough. You'd be amazed at how many times I talk to very successful women and they're like exiting a company and they figure out that, oh my God, my guy partner figured out how to structure everything 3 years ago. And I never knew I needed to do all these things because he never told me. And so having these conversations is so important. So I encourage you to find a couple people that you're comfortable with having these conversations about, and you're not going to know everything. I know Rebecka kind of talked about just kind of getting started, but you don't need to understand what an NFT is and how Bitcoin works and all these things to be doing this. I promise you that a lot of these bros don't understand how these things work either. So it's just realizing that it's not just you. Media told you don't understand it, but frankly, none of us are taught it in school unless we're professionals at doing this. So just realizing that you're not alone in this and to start the conversation.
I love that. Yes. Start somewhere.
I think the other thing is that, a lot of women rely on their husband or their partner, and
Mm-hmm.
They don't actually know what kind of money they have or where it is or how to get it invested, and they're not paying the bills and so forth. And so I do think that women need to have more of those open conversations, even within their family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a accountability and responsibility piece, right? Transparency, it's important. And that could be a tricky subject too, depending on what the arrangement is, right, between couples and families and things. So Rebecka, what do you have to share with?
Yeah, so to me, building abundance is the same thing as, trying to get on a healthier diet or trying to lose weight. It is a long-term thing. And I think I heard it a little bit in the last session where you kind of have to do a 1% every single day in order to get closer and closer to your goal. And when you start changing your environment where it enables that, maybe you remove yourself from all of these like advertisements, and maybe you start following like all of these like social media accounts that really stress out personal finance and make it in a fun way. And maybe you find a really good friend in your real life, or maybe on the internet, that all of a sudden starts becoming your accountability bae, where you guys have like small little goals. Like, I want to invest $100 out of every paycheck into an index fund. That money goes a long way versus not doing it at all. So I think when we start doing it from like a community oriented, I genuinely believe that building wealth starts, especially from a first gen perspective, it always starts with community. And as long as you have that, and as long as and if you fall off the bandwagon, you will be able to jump back on, because you created an environment that enables that goal again.
Now, what if people want to connect with both of you? What are some ways so how can people get started with Ellevest, and then how can people connect with you at First Milli?
Yeah, so you can find our site. We're Ellevest, ELLEVEST.com. You can find a lot of resources on there. I also encourage you all to join our newsletter. It's free, and it has a lot of amazing just information on investing with an impact, and just really a good first step to learning within that. And then you can find me on the site under the private wealth as well, to contact as well.
Great.
And same for First Milli. We also have a newsletter, and we're all over social media, where you can just follow us, make sure you get your daily dose of like maybe real estate, maybe credit cards. We're constantly talking about different topics, and on our website you'll see like our little breakdowns for small things, like how to get to $1 million by like doing specific bite-sized stuff today.
That's great. Somebody from the audience just quickly shared that there isn't a great comprehensive guide to investing, so that maybe that's something that this group can tackle. But I think both of you, well, at Ellevest, you have you were saying you're also doing trainings and things like that, and it sounds like, Rebecka, you do that as well, right? And so yeah, I just encourage to check out both of their sites, and to try to do a one big comprehensive, here's 101 to investing, could be super overwhelming. So I do believe in doing the bite-sized chunks of knowledge as well, to taking it in little bits at a time and putting things into practice, and to kind of get started on that.
No one became an expert in 30-minute webinar, so totally can take that. Yeah.
And I do have two little snippets to add on that, and why it is important to make sure you know what you're doing. So an uncle of mine, he rolled over his 401k, and for 15 years he didn't, like, the money transferred over, but for 15 years he didn't invest the cash. So when he had found out, like, he thought he was invested the whole time. So when he had found that out, he was like, he didn't know that was specifically part of the process, because there's nothing in that process where someone tells you that. And First Milli released a post a couple weeks back about talking about how easy it is to grow wealth using index funds and the power of compound interest. It's like if a 24-year-old or even a 57-year-old puts $500 into an index fund, that money would grow a lot over time. And we even did the math. Like, if you drop $500 in 40 years ago, today it would be $24,000. And that's literally without you doing anything to it. So that's why I highly push, just get started investing as soon as you can.
Well, thank you both so much. We are out of time, and I feel like I would love to dive into creating more content with both of you in education with the community, because I think people are hungry for the knowledge, and I think it's really important to create a safe space to have the conversations. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, thanks for sharing all your wisdom. And well, I hope we'll connect soon. We're going to venture off into our last panel for the day, but thank you again.
Thank